from the beginning of the semester, we are discussing about static force analysis. Of mechanisms wherein an external force is applied. If an external force is applied, the mechanism will tend to move, but you arrest that movement by applying an external torque called a holding torque, called holding force, so that the mechanism is not permitted to move. At that time you draw the free body diagram of each link and get the reactions. So that is static force analysis. Then we have discussed about dynamic force analysis. In dynamic force analysis, we consider the mechanism, linkages of mechanism are in motion. The linkages are accelerating. Then using the acceleration diagram, we find the acceleration of the center of gravity of the each linkage and impose an imaginary force called inertia force and imaginary torque called inertial torque on the system to bring it to an equilibrium. That principle called D'Alembert principle. So once you impose this inertial forces on the linkages, the system can be brought into a dynamic equilibrium, and you can draw the free body diagram of those linkages and solve the problem as you did it for the static force analysis. But there is the argument still continues whether the inertia force is a real force or imaginary force. So if I take an inertia force, I have said it is a fictitious force. It is a fictitious force as far as the accelerating body is concerned. It is imposed to bring in the equilibrium called dynamic equilibrium, so that the equations or problems of dynamics can be solved as the problems in statics. But they can be real if you look at these forces as the reactions of the accelerating bodies. For example, I have a toy here. The toy has one rotating body. So you can think of this toy as having one rotating linkage which has a mass away from the center of gravity. So this is, say, your O2, and there is a mass which is not passing through the center. There is an eccentricity. When it is rotating at a constant speed, what will happen is at least there will be an acceleration of the body, centripetal acceleration will be there. So that centripetal acceleration need to be given by the support. That is this support should give that. So the supports will experience a reaction of the centripetal force. So if I switch on, you can see the effect. We will be discussing about this in detail in balancing chapter. This force is not going to be constant because it will be constant in magnitude, but the direction will continue to change. As it rotates, the direction will continue to change, so the reactions also will continue to change. The reactions will be exactly equal to the inertia force. So as per the reactions are concerned, it is inertial force. So let me switch on. and see that it is shaking, isn't it? So if I keep it on the table, you can see it bumps. Okay, why this shakes? How will you explain this? So as I told you, there is only one single linkage with an unbalanced mass. So there will be, it requires a centripetal acceleration, but this linkage offers a reaction. That reaction is experienced by the body which is supporting it. That body is not fixed. So that is also free. That is why according to this force, it moves in the different directions. Okay. So this can be explained only if you consider that inertial force as a reaction force which is real. Otherwise, what will happen? We cannot explain this why it is jumping. Okay. So as per the inertial force is concerned, it can be a force which is used for calculative purpose as a fictitious force. That is the D'Alembert principle. Otherwise, if you consider there is a reaction on the support which is offering this active force, then it is real. Okay, so that kind of interpretation you can have about the inertia force. And the inertia torque also, it is the same. But this concept, that is taking inertia force as a fictitious force, which is a D'Alembert principle, according to Norton, it is nowadays it is not so valuable, because this D'Alembert principle will be useful when you are using solving the problems using graphical method. We have solved the static force analysis and dynamic force analysis using graphical method. In that case, it is very relevant. Suppose you are trying to solve these equations of equilibrium using a computer, then this D'Alembert principle is of not so much important. So you can directly solve the problem because you know what is the total force which is acting. You can write the equation and solve it. So that is a comment by the Norton. Okay, but for the beginners to understand what it is, graphical method is better. That is what we are going to do. So we have completed the static and dynamic force analysis. The next thing is combined force analysis. Because mechanisms sometimes will be subjected not only to the accelerating force, also to some kind of an external force. In that case, you should be able to still solve the reactions on the linkages so that you can calculate the maximum forces which are acting on it. So that will help you to design. Now let us take some simple problem in a combined force analysis. We take a slider crank mechanism. One word of caution is that whatever you are doing here, if you are calculating the torque required to hold or initial torque, whatever it is, that is for that particular position. If I change the position little bit, I have to redo the calculation. So I have to do this for the entire cycle, and I have to find out on which point the maximum forces occur, and accordingly I have to design. But we cannot be doing that as a full length. So what we are doing is, we are doing it as a sample, that is for one position. But this is to be done for the entire position. That is all the 360 degrees you have to calculate and find out where the maximum forces are coming. Now you take a slider crank mechanism. The mass of the piston is given. So I can call it as M4. The mass of the connecting rod is given, that is M3. Mass of this crank is given, M2. And center of gravity of the linkages position is given. So CG3, center of gravity of the piston is given, center of gravity of the crank position is given. Moment of inertia of the linkage 3, that is through the center of gravity, axis passing through the center of gravity, I3 is given, then I2 is given. Here I don't require moment of inertia because that is, for a piston I can give you the moment of inertia, but that is of no use, in the sense that it is not going to rotate at all. It is constrained only to translate. So moment of inertia is not required, it is not given. So these informations are given. In addition to this, if these informations are given, what you can do is you can do the dynamic force analysis. So if you have an acceleration diagram, you can find out what is the acceleration of this piston, and you can impose the inertial force on this, that is say F4. You can find out the inertial force and the torque and combine it to say what is the inertial force F2. You can also here, you can find out what is the inertial force and torque, that is F2. So all these things, as we discussed last class, you can find out these inertial forces, impose them as if it is an external force. Then if you do that, that comes under the category of a dynamic force analysis. But in a combined force analysis, you, in addition to it, you apply the external force. Being an engine, if you take it as an IC engine during the power stroke, if you take this instant refers to a power stroke, what will happen is a gas pressure force will be acting on it. In addition, the linkages are in motion, there is an acceleration to it. So you have to impose this also in addition to these forces, inertial forces, to do the complete analysis. So this is called a combined force analysis. So how to proceed and do the combined force analysis? This is the external force that is acting. These are all the inertial forces. Draw the free body diagram for the piston. Now external force P is known in magnitude and direction. The inertial force F4 is known in magnitude and direction. The reaction from the support, that if you assume it is frictionless, at least the direction will be normal to it. Then you have this force, that is force applied by 3 on 4, is not known in magnitude and direction. Because it is a revolute joint, it can apply forces in any direction. Now look at this particular case. How many unknowns are there? 3 unknowns. So this magnitude is not known, here magnitude direction. 3 unknowns are there. So it can be solved, isn't it? But look at this specific case. For solving this, this particular thing is going through this point, this is also through this point, all of them are passing through this point. So all the forces are concurrent at a point. Now if I draw the free body diagram, suppose this is my P, my inertial force may be like this, because it is just opposite direction, I can write like this, this is F4, and the direction of this is known. But the other one, you do not know the magnitude and direction. So in this case, it can be like this. or it can be like this, or it can be anything. Because the direction and magnitude of that particular thing is not known, we don't have a unique solution for this. So here if you look at, we have only 3 unknowns. We have been saying that if I have 3 unknowns, it is solvable. But this is the case where the 3 unknowns are, these forces are acting concurrently in a point. Suppose this force, if it acts away from there, then it is possible to solve. But all the points, all the forces are concurrent already, it is difficult to solve. You have any doubt? So this is a special case where concurrent this thing is there, it is not possible to solve. What about this linkage? That is linkage 2, free body diagram of that if I draw. I have F4, 3, here F2, 3, and I have initial force F2. Here I have 4 unknowns, this is also not solvable. So why we should be dealing with something not solvable? So if you see that a simple slider crank mechanism, if you remember in static force analysis we have taken a slider crank mechanism, but wherein we did not impose this third force. Then we found that this is going to be along this line, we solved it. But in this case it is not the case, it is different. So if you consider the piston separately as a free body and the linkage 2 separately, connecting rod separately, you cannot solve. So what is the method suggested is combine the linkage 2 also here, linkage 3 also here. So you take these 2 together and consider them as a single body. So in that case, what are the unknown forces? Instead of taking the piston separately and connecting rod separately, I have freedom to consider both of them together. In that case what will happen? This is F2, 3 is unknown. This is the magnitude is unknown. Now we have 3 unknowns here when you combine together. And the forces are not concurrent. So these forces are concurrent, but this need not be concurrent. So this is a solvable situation. So it is, you have to use different techniques to solve based on the case-to-case basis. But general methods are these. So in this case, how can you solve? If you combine this together, is you can take a moment about this point, you can find out what is the magnitude of it. Okay? So once I find the magnitude of this force, that is F14, by taking a moment about this, then I have to simply construct a force polygon, and the force polygon should be closed, then that will give me the magnitude and result of F23. Okay? So this is how you solve when you have the external force, that is not only the initial force, an external force is also acting. It is called combined force analysis. You have any doubt, please? So there is one more term to be discussed, which is called a shaking force. What is a shaking force? Shaking force is the combination of all the inertial forces. You have inertial forces acting. So if you take all the forces, inertial forces, and combine and find out the resultant, then that is called a shaking force. That is responsible for shaking the foundation, which is transmitted to the foundation. That is responsible for shaking. So this one, why it shakes is because of the shaking force. But we didn't have that mechanism, but we have only one linkage here. So this shakes because of the net shaking force. In case I have a shaking, if you have a mechanism where I have multiple linkages, if that shakes, it is because of the net resultant of all the inertial forces. That is called a shaking force. So you will be able to see the shaking force in the balancing experiment. So that we will do in few classes from now. So with this we conclude the dynamics of linkages, that is the force analysis on linkages. But your learning will be complete if you do the mini drafter session. So we will have a mini drafter session where you are supposed to solve few problems of static force analysis, dynamic analysis and combined analysis. Then your learning will be complete. Now we are going to see how to measure certain parameters that are required. So for example, for doing dynamic force analysis, we need the mass of the linkage, we need the center of gravity of the linkage, we need the moment of inertia. Of the linkage. Only in exam question paper these things will be given to you, but otherwise most of the time you will be given that linkage, you have to calculate it, you have to find out. Because last semester when they were doing the Murphy bed, there was a gas spring. A gas spring, what is the characteristics of the gas spring? They have approached many places, nobody could give, right? So ultimately they have to use their own UTM to test it. So nobody will give you. If you have a shock absorber, damper in this, even if you contact the manufacturer, they won't give. So in those cases you have to find out what it is. So for example, I have a connecting rod here. This is a linkage. Now for slider connect mechanism, this is this linkage. Now I need, if I want to do the analysis, I need these properties. So first property, mass. So how to find out the mass of this? It's a simple, stupid question. How to find the mass of this? Of course, by looking at it, you don't have a sensory perception to say what is this mass. You have to use some measuring device. You have a weighing scale. Use a weighing scale. It will give you what is the mass of it. Come on. The weighing scale measures the mass or weight. whether it measures mass or weight. Then if you say it is measuring the weight on standing on the platform, weighing platform, you have to divide that by approximately 10 to get your mass. Is it measure the mass or weight? Unit is different. No, you have multiple answers, Unit is given as mass. It is kilogram force. Okay, there we need some explanation or further understanding to it. Suppose I have, for example, I use an elastic device like a spring to measure the mass. You have a spring balance. So if you are using a spring balance for measuring the mass of it, if you attach your connecting rod here, what it will be responsive to? Spring will deflect based on the applied force or mass. Force. It is responsive only to the force. So it will be responsive to M into G. Right? So if you are using an elastic device like a spring, the spring will be responsive to only to the force applied. So what you will be measuring, or the sensing element will be responsive to the weight of this, not to the mass of this. So if I take a spring balance and in space if I use that, it may not deflect at all. If I go to the moon, it will show you a different reading. That is the meaning of this. Because the force applied by this connecting rod will be different in different environment. Like in Earth it will be M into G, in space it may be 0. There in moon it will be different because G is different. But there is other type of balance where you have it is called a pan balance. Here you put your mass and G is acting. So here you have some weighing, you have a gauge. So you have a measuring weights or calibrated weights that is provided here. Suppose I say this is M1G, this is M2G. Here also we use this for measuring the mass or weight, whatever it is. Let us see how it is working. So this is L1, if it is balanced properly, say L1 and L1. So here moment is balanced. So we can write the moment about this, M1G into L is equal to M2G into L. So here this will be balanced only if M1 is equal to M2. That means this kind of pan balances are not affected by the G value. So this can be used anywhere. Even in moon or space, it will just measure the mass. What about this spring balance? It will be responsive only to the force. But is there any caution that when you use a spring balance divided by 10? No. What they have done is, the scale is drawn to read the mass. So it will be responsive to the force. So when I put 1 kg mass, it will impart a force of 1 kg force, but you mark that as 1 kg. When you put 2 kg mass, it will impart a force of 2 kg force, but I will just mark it as 2 kg. So I will be reading the mass. Whether it is a spring balance or it is a pan balance, it will be capable of showing the mass. But caution, if you are using a spring balance in a different gravitational accelerations, you have to recalibrate it. Some of the sensitive devices, for example, we have a pressure calibrator where we use some weights and that applies a force. So there in the calibration certificate it says that the calibration, this calibrated on G value of 9.81. You have to correct it for local G value. So local G value is to be taken and correction factors is to be applied. Okay? So this is responsive to the force, but it is calibrated for measuring mass. And this is a pan balance, you don't have to bother about it, straight away you can measure the mass. Okay? So it is very simple. I don't have to worry about what is the type of the weighing machine is. I can put it and it will give you and it reads the mass. Okay? Now the next property, center of gravity. How to find the center of gravity of this? How to find the center of gravity of the book? I can just try to move and say at what point it balances. So you can use the method of balancing. So you can find out a point where the applied force and the weight. So if we take an object like this, that is your connecting rod, the CG may be here. If I apply a force exactly through the CG, it will balance. That is the principle of finding the center of gravity. So what is to minimize errors, I cannot apply on over an area. I have to make it so that it applied over a line. So there is this thing called a knife edge. This is a very sharp edge called knife edge. So you can use a knife edge for balancing. So I put it over here, I move it left and right and see that at particular knife edge it will balance. I am not going to balance, it is very very delicate. Okay? So if I put it like this, you have to find out at what point it is balanced. So then you can mark it over there, that is your center of gravity. That is one way of doing it. Otherwise, you can suspend it using the knife edge. If it is an irregular object like this, suspend it like this and draw the vertical line, because it will be, the CG will be along the vertical line. Then you rotate it and suspend it on some other point, draw a vertical line. So the intersection of these two will be CG. If you have a provision, if your object enables you to suspend at two different points, you can suspend it and draw the vertical line. You can use a plumb line for drawing it. So the intersection of these two will be your center of gravity. But there is another way to do it, is you can use two weighing balances. Can use two weighing balances. So it will measure the force F1, it will measure the force F2. So here is your weight W. So this distance if you say it is L1, this distance if you say L2, you can write the moment balance about this one, F1, sorry, this is L1, this is L2, F1 L1 is equal to F2 L2. And also another equation is there, F1 plus F2 is equal to W. So what you need is either L1 or L2, then you can find out the center of gravity position by measuring the force F1 and F2 separately. You can find out the center of gravity. So this is another way of doing it. But if it is a three-dimensional object which is quite irregular, you have to measure the weights at least 3 points. So this is going to be a cumbersome process. For example, a satellite, but ISRO makes satellites. I want to find out the center of gravity of the satellite. Only if I apply a force such that it passes through the center of gravity, the satellite will be translating. Otherwise, if I simply apply a force elsewhere, it will be translating and rotating. So you will not be able to control its movement. So there will be small rockets in the satellite. If I take this as a satellite, there will be small rockets at different locations. They are called pencil jet. Small jet streams can be coming out of it and produce reaction forces. So I can operate these pencil jets in such a way that I can manipulate the position of the rocket. If I want this to rotate, I have to apply a couple. If I want to simply translate, I have to carefully operate the pencil jet so that the net force is acting only through the CG of the rocket, CG of the satellite. So in ISRO, you have a machine to find out the center of gravity. You keep the satellite over there, it will have a force transducer to measure it, and it will calculate and tell you where the center of gravity is. So it is, you cannot suspend it or rotate it and do these things. So that is a very important job for them. Now the third property, that is the moment of inertia. For this connecting rod, how to find the moment of inertia? As I told you, if you can use the calculations, that is the analytical method to calculate. If you have a computer program which have modeled it accurately enough, then you can ask the program to calculate it. But there could be some issues, like you have to model accurately. There may be center holes which will be running along this. For passing the lubrication, there may be a hole inside. So you have to model that. You have bronze bushes here. You have a bushes that is made of different material. You have to consider the density of it. You have to consider all the detail. The accuracy of that calculation will be better. But as I told you, you need not calculate when you can measure. That is the Archimedes. So how to measure the moment of inertia of this? The thing is very simple. What you have to do is, you take this connecting rod and use a knife edge. Oh, lucky, it is magnetic. I don't know whether it will be able to withstand this. Yeah, very nice. Now what you do is, I have suspended this connecting rod on a knife edge. Give a small push, let it oscillate and take the reading. Period of oscillation, I have to note it down. If I note down the period of oscillation, I can calculate the moment of inertia. How? So there comes the concept of compound pendulum. Simple pendulum and compound pendulum. Simple pendulum is where the mass is concentrated. Compound pendulum, the mass is distributed, so you can find out the center of gravity for this. This is the oscillation point. The difference between simple pendulum and compound pendulum is a simple pendulum, the mass is concentrated at the place. A compound pendulum, the mass is distributed. Say in the movie called Three Idiots, there will be some classroom clippings. One of the classroom clipping, the question is asked, can you define what is a machine? Okay? There is another classroom clipping where the teacher would be discussing about the simple pendulum and compound pendulum. Now, the simple pendulum and compound pendulum, if you are able to derive the equation for the period of oscillation is you could measure and you can see whether you can calculate the moment of inertia. Okay? For simple pendulum, can you do it for a simple pendulum? You should be able to do it at any time. I would say if you are good mechanical engineering student, some of the fundamental thing you should be able to calculate at any time. For example, centripetal acceleration, period of simple pendulum, period of compound pendulum. These are the things at any time you should be able to derive. So I take this as a length L, then it is displaced at this instant by an angle theta. Then the weight, that is mg, will be acting all the time in a vertical direction. So there is a small this thing in a perpendicular to it. What you will have is mg sine theta. So the torque is equal to I alpha. That's what we use. The first principle, we use it for deriving the pendulum period. T is equal to, T is mg sine theta, that is the force component, and L is the moment arm. So that will give you the torque. That is equal to I times alpha. So alpha, I can write it as theta double dot. I here is mass is concentrated, so that m into L square. So I can write in this form that sine theta is theta if the displacement theta is small. So you can see that mg L theta is equal to m L square theta double dot. So I can write it as theta double dot is equal to theta L by L square. You have GL by L square. So that is equal to G by L theta. So this is this equation resembles a simple harmonic equation. we can say this is related to omega square. But is it correct? My derivation, I have purposefully omitted one thing, negative sign. I have purposely omitted the negative sign. I have to put a negative sign here, but why? Forces. So there, as he said, that is right. If I take this theta is a positive direction, this is the theta as a positive direction, the torque, the force and the torque which is produced in the negative direction. But this particular thing should hold good for other side as well. If I take this is the theta, this is the pendulum position, the theta will be negative, but the force is opposite. So one of the argument for putting the negative sign here is that this torque is restoring torque. This torque is restoring. This torque, the tendency of the torque is always trying to bring the pendulum to the equilibrium position. That's called a restoring torque. The restoring torque or restoring forces will be trying to bring the object to the equilibrium position. Suppose I cross the equilibrium position, it will reverse the direction, try to bring it. Okay? So they will be having a negative sign compared to the displacement. If displacement is in direction, the restoring torque will be opposite direction. So that is why a negative sign is incorporated here. So you will have a negative sign here. So here we are looking at an equation where the acceleration is proportional to the displacement, but with the opposite sign. Then this is an equation of a simple harmonic motion. So this particular term would be referring to omega square. Therefore, omega is equal to root of G by L. Omega I can say is 2 pi by T, that is equal to root of G by L. So T is equal to 2 pi root of L by G. Here I have skipped the simple harmonic motion. The simple harmonic motion will be having this particular form. The acceleration is proportional to the displacement with a negative sign. This proportionality constant will be omega square. But I did not discuss that in detail. I will do it little later when we are discussing about vibrations. So T is equal to 2 pi root of L by G is a period of oscillation for simple harmonic. For a simple pendulum, this is the equation. For a compound pendulum, what will be the change? In a compound pendulum, also this fundamental thing T is equal to I alpha is applicable. There also it is mg sin theta and L will be the torque which is acting, is also equal to I into alpha. But the only thing is here, since the mass is concentrated, I could take the radius of gyration as equal to the length of the pendulum. So that particular thing I cannot take when the mass is distributed. So I will have this as k square. So this moment of inertia is what? This is the moment of inertia. As I told you, it is not the moment of inertia. your moment of inertia is not a unique value, I should say that the moment of inertia over which axis. So this is the moment of inertia about an axis of suspension. So we are talking about the moment of inertia of this point about the axis of suspension, that T is equal to I alpha. This I represents with respect to O2. So K is with respect to O2. So I cannot do this here, I have to put it as M KO2 square. There I can, this cannot be written like this in this form. So M can be cancelled. So theta double dot is equal to, you will have GL here by K02 square. So this will be GL by KO2 square. So the time period also will be like GL by KO2 square. Oh, yeah, this will be reversed, correct. So this is the equation for the period of oscillation of a compound pendulum. Now you see whether it is useful for finding the moment of inertia of the pendulum. That's where we started. Now you see the time period is what I could measure. G is a constant. L is the distance between the center of suspension to the center of gravity, so that you can be experimentally found out. So what you will get from this is, you can find out what is the radius of gyration of this particular body about the center of oscillation. If you multiply it by that M into KO2 square will be the moment of inertia of this object about this particular thing. Then you can use the parallel axis theorem to find out the moment of inertia of this rod about the CG. Okay, so you can calculate or you can measure the moment of inertia of this object very simply by suspending this as a compound pendulum, and you need only a stopwatch, you give a displacement and measure it. You can calculate you can find out what is the moment of inertia of this connecting rod. Using a parallel axis theorem, you can find out what is the connecting rod, moment of inertia of this when it passes through the center of gravity. That is the additional information required for your calculations. Okay, so we will have about 10 minutes break, then we will assemble.